Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Jonathan York from Georgia, USA. He is a business owner, husband, father of five, entrepreneur, podcaster, founder of the Resilient Man Project. Link in the description below. You can find him at Resilient Man Project all over social media and on YouTube. And we'll get right back to him in 2 seconds. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers and viewers for I play video games too. I have some other stuff on my channel, audiobooks, good stuff, free versions of, speaking of which, my historical dream literature, 15 currently available works. The most recent, The World of Dreams by Havelock Ellis, the enhanced and, in my opinion, definitive version. You can find all this and more at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Downloadable audio versions of every interview, a complete list of all the books and links. I'm working on a dream-related encyclopedia of all the people and places and times and dates, and that's enough about me. Let's get back to our guest. Jonathan, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good deal. So, the first question right off the bat, what is the Resilient Man Project?
Well, it stemmed from, 40 years of a rough life and bad decisions and having to overcome thing after thing after thing I woke up one day and then I just was put on my heart that it was all for a reason. It was all for a purpose, and that I needed to share what I've been through and hopes to kind of be the man that goes first, to be vulnerable, and hopefully other men will go second. And they've come behind me and shared their their testimony and what they've been through. And that's what we're doing. We're using our life and our stories to help the man that's maybe in the battle or the battle's, coming, to be more prepared.
So that's a broad stroke. So you said you led the way by telling your story first, saying, look, you can do this too. And that has drawn out other people to say, I'm going to contribute my story to this in hopes of building up what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Good deal. Is that, how long has it been going on? And how many participants have you had? Are you doing interviews with folks? Is that what the YouTube channel is about?
Yeah, we've done. So the first couple were just me. Just kind of, the first one was kind of the descend, all the negative that I'd overcome. And the second one's kind of the ascension. And then behind that has been 7 or 8 episodes of other people's stories of, we've had a gentleman come on that lost his wife to suicide, and all kinds of just really tough things to have gone through. And the people have come on and they've shared and they've been vulnerable, and it's been amazing really to hear their stories and to, put it out to the world and to know that there may be another man that has gone through that, and maybe he doesn't, he hasn't made it to the other side and isn't okay yet. And so kind of give them a path forward. It's been a really, I feel like it's my life's mission.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, there's so many places to go with this. It's a fascinating subject in general. There's a lot of personal layers to it, and there's a lot of psychological angles to it. There's a lot of social and cultural angles to it. I don't know, thinking of those different categories of how you look at what you're doing, does anything stand out as the most important aspect?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm asking the question right.
Yeah, I think I'm tracking I'm sorry, I can't remember how you worded it. The third one, the cultural, the cultural piece. Yeah, we've really attacked the division in this country, and it's been really cool. I've had people from other walks of life come on, and it's like our experiences are a lot different than what we're told our experiences should be. So we've kind of shed a light on that the last couple of episodes, which has been really cool.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great thing that I try to do as well. It's what I love about doing this is not only, our dreams, universal to the human condition. I even if you don't remember your dreams, like mostly I don't. Sometimes I'm aware that I dreamed, but I don't remember the details. But everybody dreams. It's just thinking while we're asleep. And that's a universal common across mankind. It's a feature of being human. So I like the idea that unites us all. It makes some great evergreen content too, because someone could listen to this stuff 10 years from now. It's like, that's still an interesting mystery. What was that? I think you're probably finding the same thing, is that, no matter what walk of life you come from, you're still walking life as a human, and to be human is to suffer and struggle.
That's right. Exactly. And we're a lot more alike than we are different. We want to look at things as silly as, how dark our tan is or whatever. But it's like, honestly, at the end of the day, we've all gone through a lot of rough things. And, I don't know, man, it's been very fulfilling.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I found too, doing this, is, the idea of trying to offer someone something, as much as I'm getting something, getting content or whatnot. What makes this enjoyable for me is the process of giving someone something meaningful, giving back in that way. And I think you mentioned you're 40-ish, whatever. I'm about 45. You kind of hit a certain stride in life where you're like, I've worked as hard as I can on me in a lot of ways. And now it's kind of time to try and give back a little bit, try and help other people if possible, in whatever way is unique to ourselves.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I went through this change, I would say, right around 40. I'm 42. And you'll hear more of my story as we go further. But for 40 years leading up to that, I kind of viewed myself as a victim. To be honest, like just kind of walked through life with that victim. Why me? Never going to stop happening to me. Why me? And then it was just put on my heart that it's all been for a reason. That's why.
Yeah, that's a very powerful perspective too. And there's, that can be tough to tease apart from the social and cultural level. There's a lot of different things that go into it, because we do suffer a lot of things in life that are not our fault, and some things that are, but what do we do with that? And how do we make sense of it is a big deal. So I was just talking with the guy in the last episode, about the concept that he named, that I had heard before, but I couldn't remember until he brought it up again. He said toxic positivity, which is like, it's almost like wearing a mask of everything's fine, everything's going to be fine.
Good and fine.
It's not really dealing with stuff, and it's not really recognizing the struggles, as he was saying. We all struggle with these things we're going through. And I gave the example, and I thought it was funny, of a comedian, I think, who said, they say when you got cancer, you got to stay positive. You're like, screw that, I want to be angry. And that got him through it. And sometimes you got to be angry, and that's okay. And, the idea that, so I was trying to tease those two apart in my head in terms of like, there's so many ways to go with this. It's so fascinating. There's the idea that if we sit in a victim mentality, that robs us of our power to affect a positive change. So that's one angle of it that I think you've definitely discovered, of like, it's that idea of my life is shit. It's always going to be shit, and it will never be better than that. And I can't do anything about it. That locks you in. That's missing 100% of the shots you never take. And there's the other side of it where people minimize through positivity, and that can be unhelpful as well. But you found a way, which I think is the healthiest psychological way, is putting some meaning to it. I was trying to think of the guy that said something about, the only thing that makes the suffering of life bearable is having a reason for it. Like, there's nothing more destructive than meaningless suffering, to suffer for no reason. Yeah.
Never heard it put quite like that, but yeah, absolutely, for sure. And going back to what I said a few minutes ago, especially, in the culture of what it looks like to be a man, good and fine, or how you doing? I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine. I mean, that's what we're, that's what we're taught, being a man is. But, I think that men need to share. I think that they're sitting around just waiting on someone to go first.
Yeah. And that's another one of the fascinating angles, the cultural angle of, there are expectations put on men of the stoic rock, the silent, long suffering. You don't bother other people. You don't put your burdens on other people. It's all framed in that way. But if you look back, I love the Joseph Campbell hero story stuff. So I looked at all these mythological stuff, and what you see repeatedly is the story of the hero suffering greatly. And that being publicly known. I mean, that's the whole point of the story. Look at how much this person suffered and then overcame. So, and even in like the ancient, Greek poetry, like the men in those stories were tremendously passionate and emotional and expressive, and moved to tears by all kinds of things. And these used to be our heroic exemplars. It's like live well, live big, and feel intensely. And a lot of people confuse stoicism with being unemotional. Well, that's not exactly right. It's not being ruled by your passions. Doesn't mean being passionless. It doesn't mean having no emotions. And then in modern psychology, we discover you suppress all that stuff. It comes out in other negative ways. You got to get it out somehow. You got to let it out. And sharing stories. I would like to see more of that in our modern day culture. The idea of men sharing their stories and struggles and what got them down and what lifted them up. Because, in that model of the heroic epic hero, we're all on our own journeys. We're all our own hero in our own stories. So yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that in my head.
Yeah, no, I've heard, the hero's journey thing mentioned a lot since I've gotten into this. There's character types or whatever. I haven't never really looked into it, but I've heard it mentioned several times since I've started this. It seems really interesting. I think I'm gonna dig into that some.
Yeah, I mean, it was years and years ago I read that book by Joseph Campbell, and that book is like 80 years old at this point. He wrote it back in like the 1940s or something, but there's still modern discussion of it. And I mean, a lot of people know that Campbell inspired, Campbell and Kurosawa inspired George Lucas, who then made Star Wars. And that Luke's arc in A New Hope, episode 4, is kind of the classic hero's journey. And he was shooting for that on purpose. That's like, I'm going to tell a story in the classic style. The great evil and the call to adventure and, magic and, right on down to he seeks the wizard in the desert, Obi-Wan, to kind of put him on his journey and give him advice, training, that kind of thing. Yeah. I love that.
I think that, I know that for me personally, the generation before us, I think it was a lot more, rub some dirt on it, don't cry. You know what I mean? I think that was just how they were raised. But I mean, I tell you what, if you go up to someone that and you are vulnerable with them, and like you would be amazed what you will hear back, because honestly, like I said, they're just waiting on permission.
For sure. Yeah. And that's a lot of the social masks we wear to kind of get through the day and grease the wheels in a lot of ways. You're probably not going to unload to the cashier when they go, "How are you today?" They're rigging up your
stuff. You never know.
Sometimes, but no, that's a fair point. I was going to say, typically maybe not, but sometimes they'll say, "How you doing today?" I'm like, today's fucked, and they're like, "I feel you, me too." They'll just meet you where you're at, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you're like, I'm not going to dump on you, but I've had better days. And they're like, we understand each other in that way. So yeah.
Sure.
But, and that's a tough thing too, because we don't want to abandon social norms, but we also want to make it more normal to be a little more honest sometimes. You're not having a bad day. If you are having a bad day, maybe you don't want to cover it up. You want to let people know why you're having a hard time. Noticed that recently, just in interactions with some people who shall remain nameless, like someone looked like they were angry, kind of cranky, and I don't know, did I do something? And eventually we got to discussing, no, it's not you, I'm just having a thing. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Now, hey, I'll leave you alone. You're quiet. It's not me. I don't take offense. You need your time. Right. This dog is trying to get down out of my lap. Did your peanut butter?
Oh, I'll take him out. Or she out. He out. She out. He.
He. I'll probably use that as a screenshot for the show. Anytime you can put an animal in the screenshot, it's a good thing. Yeah, so you're getting. So back to you and your actually the Resilient Man project. Have you noticed any themes yet? You're just starting. You're very, kind of very few episodes. Maybe not enough data for a pattern. But have you started noticing themes about how people, similar ways in which they struggled and similar ways they got themselves out of it? Is anything starting to fall into place, like broad advice on those two things or perspective? Yeah.
I think because I'm only 10 or 12 episodes in, it's the numbers are a little bit skewed of people that resonate with my story. So it's like mine, you know, people that have gone through similar type of stories. But like I said, now some of these people I have known, like the gentleman that I just talked about, where his wife committed suicide. I knew him from another group, and I'd met him in St. Louis in an immersion event, and we had dinner, and there was like, I don't know, 20 people at the table, and it was like me and him were the only people there when he was telling me a story, and it stuck with me just to my core. And so a couple weeks later, I found him on Messenger, and I was like, "Hey, man, look, like, I don't know where you are in this, but I think a lot of people in general could benefit from hearing your story, because, you know, he's made it through it now, and he's built another life, and he's okay now. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that aren't yet."
For sure. Yeah. No, that's something that, the idea of light at the end of the tunnel, hope, for things to get better. That's something I tried to do when I was working in, psychiatry on that side of things. Just to reassure people of, like, you know, not only do I sympathize and empathize and all those good things of like, I care about you and I want you to get better, but I've actually seen this enough times to know that you're just in a part of that tunnel where you can't see the end around the bend. The light's not reaching you. And it's okay to believe that it's not there. I mean, that's where you're at right now, is you just can't, because you literally can't see it yet in that metaphorical sense. And then, you know, you just keep, and then that persistence, the dedication to continuing to
take the next step
with that encouragement. Yeah. To encourage them to keep walking forward. It's like, you're only going to see it if you get there. And that's the thing with suicide too. And people who have suicidal thoughts, it's a very interesting situation. It's like, without validating it as the right decision, the way I would describe it is, it's a logical choice based on faulty premises. I'm suffering. My suffering is intolerable. It will never stop. Therefore, I must stop it myself by no longer being alive. The logical syllogism, you know, Socrates style, is valid. Faulty premise, it's never going to stop. That's generally not true. You know, discounting people in some extreme circumstances, very old, terminally ill, suffering, maybe they don't want to suffer any longer. That's one thing, but
there's outliers.
You know, a 19-year-old kid, and they're like, you know, everything's going to be screwed for the next 80 years. Like, probably not. You just can't,
probably not.
You can't see it yet. Yeah. Oh, now he wants backup. You want backup? He probably wants to go outside. Oh no. No, it's not time. It's not time. You can take a break.
Yeah, he's looking at you like, "Hey, where are you going?"
Yeah, I've got this little footstool down here. He gets up there and scratches scratches on my chair. Well, maybe that's a good segue to just kind of come here. get into your story a little bit. I know you kind of wanted to tell that as part of your background to maybe help us understand the dream part when we get to it.
Yeah, I think you have to have the backdrop for sure. To make sense of everything.
Come here.
So
come here.
I'll give you a 30,000 foot, you know, about a 10-minute or so version. You know,
sure.
Mom had me at 16, South Atlanta. Really, no support. From the time I was born, she's always been an addict. My earliest memory is like her on a mattress. You know, I won't get into that many details, but, you know, me trying to open a can of potato soup. Anyway, I'm like 2 or 3 years old and can't figure it out. And she's on the mattress all day. So fast forward to when I move in with my dad at like 5 or 6, they're alcoholics. So I was just kind of surrounded by those things my whole life. And then on top of that, we grew up really poor and in a really rough area. So drugs and prostitution and all those things just like prevalent all around me, gangs, all that stuff. So my dad worked his way up. We kind of got out of that area and went to high school, partied like everybody else, pretty normal high school. But when I turned 20, or I had my first daughter, then I had my son and was married by 22. And that whole marriage, the addiction came out in me like full force. Pathological liar, double life, running around doing just nonsense. Just a horrible person. Foreclosures, all kinds of crap. Well, I finally get tired of my crap around 30. So after 10 years of it, when we get a divorce, I hit the streets really hard for 2 years. Like really hard. End up in prison. spent 32 months in prison. So when I woke up from my haze in prison after 2 or 3 weeks of straight sleep, for the first time in over 10 years, I was sober. And I got some clarity. And I looked around and realized, when I went through diagnostics and I was playing cards with these two guys and come to realize that one of them was in for murdering his kids and one was in for rape. And I'd been like hanging out with them and kind of looked around that room and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be back here. So fast forward, get out. Within the first year of getting out, my mom overdoses and is in ICU for about a week. Like 4 or 5 days in, eyes rolled in the back of her head, mouth hanging open, like didn't think she was going to make it. I felt like I prayed her through it. To be honest, I was like, I'd missed so much time, and I just, did not want that to be it. So we didn't have really any family left on that side except for her sister, and my sister. Fast forward. So my sister and her boyfriend were big contributors to my mom being in that coma. Their drug use mixed with her crap was just super toxic. So fast forward about 6 months after that, and I get a phone call from my aunt that my sister had overdosed and passed away in some crappy motel room in Atlanta. So I wound up going, having to tell mom, which I say that's the worst day of my life, is the day that my sister died. And I had to go and tell mom. I drive 30 minutes. That drive was, oh my God, that drive was so bad. And I had to tell her. So we get through it. Obviously, mother lost her only daughter. She's taking it pretty hard. But she's kind of, to this point, between the alcohol and drug use from her whole life, mixed with the trauma from losing her daughter and other things as well, she was basically mentally like insane at this point. I used to sit outside of her apartment door and just hear her like having these conversations with no one, like evil, like twisted, saying some things, just crazy things. Long story short, I'm going to check on her on my lunch break one day, and I walk in and find her suicide by overdose on my lunch break. So that was kind of, without getting into too much, it's just kind of like the 30,000 foot view of all the major, like impactful negative events in my life.
That's some serious shit. That's getting hit with a hammer over and over and over every time you turn around. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I through all that, I came out of prison a felon and all those things at $8 an hour, and like worked my way up in like 5 or 6 years with no financial support or anything, making like almost $250,000 a year to start my own company. I got things going through it all. So, like I said, that's the negative things. And then that's the resilient piece, and just kind of a brief overview of what I've accomplished since then. So now you look at Resilient Man Project, and I want to talk about how I was able to overcome and get through and become the man I am today. So,
yeah. So, kind of at what point in your story did you have your epiphany of kind of meaning and how to put what had happened to you in context?
It was almost 6 years after my mom. So 6 or 7 years. It was a while. It was when my mom had been clean since prison. When mom overdosed that day, I grabbed pills off of her floor and threw them in my mouth and went outside and kind of relapsed. So I started going down the wrong path again for 2 or 3 months. And this is the time period where I had the dream that we're going to kind of discuss is those 2 or 3 months, probably a month and a half. No, so it was right at the end of that. So after my mom had passed, and me back on pain pills, back at the doctor, like back on the wrong path, is when the dream occurred.
And that's the dream we're going to talk about in a minute. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you feel like that dream was kind of the turning point. That's when you got the clarity.
I feel like that dream was a major turning point.
Gotcha. And then, so we've talked about like how some of the deck was stacked against you, how you leaned in and played some bad hands as you were going along. What was the ascent coming back out of that? Like so you got out of prison, then you started putting things back together for yourself. What was motivating you during that kind of intermediate time between, okay, the bad stuff is stopped and now I'm trying to build something better? Do you remember?
For a while there, I was feeding on the dark side, if you want to call it, the prove everybody wrong thing for a while. Gotcha. I think that got me so far, and then I had to look inward a little bit more. So I've started to really look inward over the past 2 years, and like I said, it's been a 10-year transition from me landing in prison to get me to where I am today. But really, when I'm looking at the inner work is what I like to call it. I feel like it's really just getting started. So it's scary and really digging in and asking why and trying to figure things out. It's scary, but necessary. So that's kind of where I am now.
You start asking questions, you're going to get answers and you might not like them, but you gotta know. I mean, the alternative is to be moved by forces you don't understand that are inside of you. And, you may still be motivated to do some of the same things depending on what it is, but at least you understand where that's coming from and where that drive to do certain things. I also wanted to just highlight that you said, you were moved by negativity for a minute, and mentioned that a minute ago, the guy who was like, I want to be angry about cancer. Sometimes if that's what's got to get you through for a minute, do it, whatever, because we might say it would have been better if you'd been motivated by positivity, but you weren't, not at that point, and you couldn't be, perhaps. So it's not even like a fault of your own. It's definitely like, people, what is it? I'm trying to make an analogy. It just occurred to me. It's like, sometimes people think adults should have it all figured out. You're old enough. Don't you know everything by now? No, who does? And we got to remember what it was like to be an infant before we had motor control. Couldn't stand up, couldn't walk. You got to walk before you can run. So there's some of these developmental things that happen at different stages for different people. And sometimes the ability to self-reflect in a specific way that lets you make use of it, it just comes to us when it comes to us. And it might be better if it could have been introduced to us earlier, but some of us didn't get that from the mom sleeping on the mattress while we're trying to open the can. And so it's that's the deck stacked against you side of things. But, and anyway, just the idea that if negativity's got to get you through for a minute, do it and see where that takes you. Yeah. And a lot of people, because a lot of people feel shame about that. It's like, it worked. It worked. If you were mean to someone, go apologize later.
If it gets you to this point to be able to, impact and do things the right way and in a positive spirit, then if it's what it takes to get you to this point, I don't see the harm in it at all. It got me here.
Yeah. So it was a little bit after that dream that you figured you would start the Resilient Man Project, or did that come actually quite a bit later?
Yeah, quite a bit later. So we're talking, almost 5 years since Mom has passed. So
okay.
Yeah, Resilient Man was not even 2 years ago. I went through a little rough time with my wife, and we got into this deep conversation, and some things were said that really kind of rocked me to my core. And I went on this work trip for 30 days or so, and while on the trip in a hotel room by myself, I really just started to kind of look inward and made so many changes. I actually lost 60 pounds. I got in shape. Just complete overhaul, mentally, physically. And then that's when I'm a man of faith, and that's when I think God put it on my heart that, hey, put you through it because you could handle it, number one, and number two, because I got big plans for you moving forward, and I'm going to need you strong. So.
Very cool. Yeah, that's those internal experiences that are just invisible to other people unless you speak it out loud. Those are more powerful than a lot of people know. I mean, a lot of things affect us from the outside, but having the perspective change, like an inner eye opened, and you can suddenly see things. This paradigm shift of
it changed everything. Like I can't even. I mean, from looking at my whole life as this unfair thing, like all of a sudden it all became like preparation. It's a complete shift. The view of my mom is just honestly, she just wasn't a good person. She really wasn't a good mother at all. Like, so I viewed her life in a certain way this whole time too. And then this shift also, now I view her life as beautiful because like it took that to get me here. Like I'm that stubborn. Like I'm just that hard. And like it took that to get me here. So, man, it shifted my views on a lot of things in a much more productive, positive light.
Yeah, definitely. And that's great. I think that's necessary. I've talked to people in the past as well about the idea of, what do you do with trauma? How can you make it meaningful? And it is something you have to make meaningful in a way. You have to do something with it that strengthens yourself, contributes to making other people's life better in some way. It's like the trauma is just going to sit there until you do something to transform it. And that
especially
helps
an addict.
Discharge it.
Yeah, especially an addict, I would say. Like, finding that thing bigger than you to pour yourself into, I think is super critical to staying clean.
For sure, yeah. And if you have nothing, you got nothing going for you. You got nothing you're working towards, nothing meaningful that you're putting your energy into. The temptation to just sink into that hedonistic pleasure button. It's like, why wouldn't I? What else I got going on? Nothing. What am I not doing that for? You got to have a reason to not do it. You got to have something else you're working on that's more important. I'd say it's just like, well, a million different contexts, but like, cheating in a marriage. Why wouldn't I just have sex with that gal? Well, I don't want to ruin a good thing. I got a reason, hey, she's pretty, love to. Gonna choose not to because what I got here, building this is more important. It works on so many different dimensions of life.
It adds a really solid layer another layer of like accountability too, because now I feel like I'm accountable to everyone that I talk to, on my platform, because I'm not going to be inauthentic. I'm not going to be a fraud. You know what I mean? So now I have to practice what I preach even more, so yeah, it's been a really good thing for me.
Definitely. That's good. Well, if you feel like we've had enough time to chat about what you do, and I think I've had a good chance to figure out where you're coming from. Do you want to jump into the dream thing? Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
Sure. I mean, like, absolutely. Like I was saying before, I can't really think of anything visual from it. I'm asleep, dead asleep, and it's like a whisper in my ear, as clear as day. And it's my mom's voice at first. And she just says, "Don't worry about me, baby." She says, "Don't worry about me, baby. I'm okay." And then pretty much directly after, and it's just like this thundering, the best thing I can say is like thunder inside my chest. I just hear, "That is enough." And it impacted me. I sat straight up in bed, and like that started me on the path to being able to tell my wife what I was going through, sit her down on the couch and say, "Hey, when this happened with Mom, I relapsed. This is where I am." All started from that dream.
Okay.
I was a little worried I'm going to give you enough to work with, really interpret much, but we'll see.
Sure. I am I'm not locked into anything in particular. And I've discovered that lately is that ability, as my process evolves, to be a little more flexible with the nature of what people bring to me. And I think there's meaning in all of these things. So we may not get the standard point by point connections, all this different stuff. We're going to have a conversation about it anyway, and it's going to be interesting. So that's the basics of it. It doesn't have to take long to tell. And then maybe a little context of around that time. You said this was when you were on the business trip and you were gone.
No. This is almost 5 years ago. So this is within 2 months of me finding my mom, and when I'm back on the pills, headed back down the wrong path. So the work business trip just happened like less than 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
And when all these big changes started to happen, but like first I had to get through the addiction and like the mourning and all that. I think, well, I don't know if I'm through all that, but I had to get through the addiction piece and kind of like right that ship. And that's what I found about like this real change is it comes and you know, you have to like one small thing, get one small thing right and build on it and build on it and build on it. And that's what for 10 years is what I've done. I know I'm a better man today than I was last week and last month, and I'll be a better man next week than I am today. You know?
Yeah, that's a big thing about self-improvement in a way. And that sounds, people don't like that term because it sounds like self-involved in a way, but it's the idea of being a better person than you were yesterday and only comparing yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's that incremental change is very important and that anyone can accomplish. I mean, I'm not going to win a foot race against, I mean, what's the last sports guy I know, Usain Bolt or whatever from 10 years ago. Never going to happen, but I could run faster or farther than I did yesterday. I could lose a couple of pounds that I had on me yesterday. All that incremental change adds up, and a lot of times it snowballs, and you get these things where it's like I'm capable now of more than I ever was because I put myself on this path on purpose. So the first thing you remember from this experience was just hearing your mom's voice. Like
my mom's voice.
That's like the first thing you remember. Anything about the environment you were in? I mean, were you just floating in darkness? Were you
darkness? Okay. It was darkness. Yeah, it's darkness. Yeah. And it was just, you know, it rattled me almost instantly because it was so real to hear her voice. And I guess subconsciously I knew she was gone. So like, you know, just that because of how real it was for me. And I mean, like she was right here whispering in my ear, you know. So it was like the first feeling I remember getting is just like, almost like a jolt, like, oh my, you know, like, there's no way that's her type of thing. And then that is enough. Like I said, it was the best way I can describe it. It was like if there was like thunder inside you, that's how I felt. It was more about how I felt too, the physical feeling of it. It was probably more impactful than the actual words that I heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing about dreams too, is that seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and simply knowing, all of these things are the same because none of it is taking place physically. It's all an experience that's happening in our, you know, neurons and the processing of information. So there isn't such a thing as seeing something in a dream being more real than knowing something or feeling something emotionally. It's all equally real in that place. So you say the idea of just being floating in darkness or being surrounded by darkness is no distinct landscape that you're in. Do you remember any period of time elapsing when you were alone there before the voice spoke?
I don't know. I keep getting like when I'm trying to think about now, I keep getting this vision of like a rocking chair, but I've never really had that before. So I'm not sure if I'm trying to connect a dot that wasn't there or if it was, but for some reason I'm thinking like really thinking on that hard, probably for the first time in a long time. I've seen a rocking chair for some reason.
And it's okay to go with these associations. Now there's two ways to look at it. Freud, way back in the day, said there's something called secondary elaboration, where we start telling a dream and our current thoughts get in the way and make us think something was in the dream that wasn't. maybe so. Some people came along after him and said, and even he, I think to some degree said, it doesn't matter. If you're thinking back on this experience, you're putting yourself back in that experience in your memory, and something occurs to you, almost doesn't matter if there's a rocking chair there when you first experienced the dream. That's what it made you think of now. Something about that experience said, it's like a rocking chair, or like I was sitting in a rocking chair. You said maybe you were.
No, an empty rocking chair, and it's actually rocking. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but yeah.
And that's where we would go with to say, what are your associations with rocking chairs? Make you think of elderly people or a specific person, a specific chair from a specific time in your life.
Not that I'm aware of, unless it's some. I'm not sure. No, I can't. That it's empty, and that maybe I'm like longing for that type of mom or mother, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, that could have been a very distinct association in your mind. I mean, I can see the iconic representation of a mother holding an infant sitting in a rocking chair. That's something a lot of us have seen before, even if we never experienced it. And there can be something in your mind of a wishful thinking or framing of look at this chair where a mother and a child should sit, but it's empty. And that's then when her voice comes to you. So there's kind of there seems like there might be a connection there. There's this kind of nothingness. You really have nothing in your mind at the moment, but this rocking chair, and then the voice of the missing mother. And she's you don't even see her. You just hear the voice. Mm-hmm. Like she's there, but she's
and it's like breath, like, you know what I mean? Like whispered, you know what I mean? Like it's so clear and
right there, almost like her lips are
right there. Like she's in just right there. And just in her little Southern draw, it's never forget it. It's okay, baby. It's okay, baby. I'm okay.
That was probably something. I mean, and it's to put it in context. This is all something you're experiencing while you're trying to process your grief at her being gone and your choices afterwards.
Battling addiction and all those things in that moment, knowing how detrimental they've been in my past, for sure.
Yeah. So there's definitely a connection there with your experiences and some of the person who showed up and the method of communication and the words they spoke, and maybe this image of the rocking chair that at least came up as an association now. And in all of that stuff is coming up as a result of doing a little bit of initial self-reflection of the idea of, what am I doing? Is this what I want to be doing? Why am I doing this? And maybe that's after you're hitting a point of somewhere around there saying, there's a part of you at least that says, I don't want to be doing this.
Yeah.
Or suspecting that it's not a great thing to do. You may have known that from there's a classic addict thing of like, I know this is bad for me, but man, I love it. And I don't know any other way, that kind of thing. Or this is what works, leave me alone. Or there's a lot of self-justification, but also self-honesty of like, I'm just miserable. I failed, all this stuff. So you get all of these things coming together at the same time. And it pops out in this dream where you get, and so literally last episode, last week, deceased mother appeared in his dream. And there's actually a grand tradition in all these dream books I'm editing and re-releasing of dreams of the dead. Goes back 5,000 years at least, but certainly in recent days and in the past 500, 200, 100 years, that is one of the most often experienced dreams, is deceased relatives coming back to let you know they're okay, or let you know they're watching out for you, or that you're doing okay. So
kind of like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say kind of like permission to move on in a way, maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, we'll look at it two ways. We go the pure scientific route. You need to give yourself permission to move on. You got to accept that they would want you to not sit around being miserable on their account. And so you're going to give yourself a vision of them encouraging you and giving you permission to let go. And then on the other side of it is, maybe it's the dead coming to let us know they're okay. I don't know. I can't say that for sure.
I think it was the latter personally, because just how real it felt.
Yeah. And
You
ultimately, I think it does matter.
wake up and I knew. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It was.
Yeah. I think both explanations serve the same purpose. So I'm perfectly willing to accept if someone says, I know for sure that was my mom from heaven talking to me. You know, she got special permission to be my guardian angel for that moment. I think it's perfectly valid. I can't say I can prove that scientifically and I know how it works, but I can say it has the same effect and it's beautiful either way. As long as they aren't coming back to tell you to kill yourself or something. That's probably not, that's probably not,
that's not mom.
That's not mom. That's not an angel, whatever it is. So you don't remember having any emotional experience of being alone in the dark before the voice? It was almost blank, numb, nothing, or at least neutral.
Yeah.
And that might be iconic too, of being alone in the dark as well. There's different ways to experience. I talked to one gal who, her experience was falling through an endless void. So she had that physical sensation when our feet are swept out from under us, we trip and gravity's got me, I'm falling. That was her sensation. But for you, that's not there. There's no sensation of standing on anything. You're not spinning topsy-turvy. There's actually a kind of a distinct lack of texture, shape, sight, sound, anything. There's just, and that brings to mind to me the idea of, the iconic idea of being lost in the dark, unable to see, not having a clear sense of yourself in the space.
Yeah.
A lot of these things are just very much iconic of not knowing how to understand what you're going through in some ways. Is kind of where I go with that. I don't know if that resonates.
Yeah, kind of not having a beacon, right? Not having a direction. Yeah, for sure.
Not even knowing you're in a tunnel or that there's a bend or that there might be light. But then this vision comes to you, and you hear the whisper, and you also feel that the intent behind it is meant to be positive. I mean, she's not just speaking the words, and she's not saying it in a sarcastic tone.
No, she's saying very loving, very sympathetic, loving. You're like, she wants me to know she's okay type of way, And then right behind that, that is enough. Like as loud as thunder in my chest, like just, I can't really describe the decibel, it was just, it's like you're outside in a major thunderstorm, but instead of that thunder, that is enough. That's how it felt inside me.
Yeah, for sure. So, she spoke to you, and you probably, as with most folks, and what makes it complicated, like if you had a parent that was just a mean, sadistic son of a bitch, and there were never any good times, it was they ignored you or they beat you. That's a specific kind of experience. Most people don't have that. Most people experience, there were good times with my mom. There were times when she gave me attention and we had fun and I was able to feel connected, like she cared. And then she went back to doing the other stuff that wasn't so good for her or me. So you had that experience mostly. There were good times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look back and I say my mom wasn't like a very good person, but that's like very much in retrospect, because in the moment, because of the man that I was, I understood her and she kind of understood me, I guess. And there's not many people, that necessarily could understand what it's like to kind of have to battle that monster inside of you every day. So there was definitely that bond. And I mean, she always treated me with love. I mean, she was just very, she was an addict, and at the end of the day, that's what really ruled her life. But I think she was the best mom that she knew how to be with what she had.
Yep. And we might wish she had come to some of the realizations you did and turned it around, and she'd still have some things to make up for, but it's good to know. And it's very typical also that there were good times. So there's that connection and that, understanding of her as a person where you could say, this is something she would do. She would encourage me. She would tell me, you don't have to suffer like this anymore. It's okay. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up like this. And it was almost immediately on the heels of her whispering in your ear that you heard her voice or another voice?
No, man, voice. Like deep manly voice. That is enough. Yeah. And that's when like sat straight up in the bed and I was like, what just happened?
Oh yeah. So
And I
there's also
felt it, you know.
there's also two different experiences going on here as well, which is the real person you knew whispering very close to your ear, clearly audible, but soft and with a lot of love to it. And then you've got a completely separate, distinct, and opposite gender voice, loud, booming. Where did that seem to come from?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure.
Fair enough. Not knowing is perfectly fine too. There's
No
you
voice
can't
that
do this wrong.
yeah, there's no voice that I could recognize. Now that is enough is something that I say a lot. I don't know if I said it a lot before though.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if I said it a lot before that day, but yeah, that is enough is something I say with my kids a lot now.
Yeah.
For sure.
No,
like when they push it a little too far, I'm like, oh, that's not, that's my
that's
thing.
far enough. Yeah. 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 No, for sure.
And when they're really in trouble, like that is enough. Almost how I heard it. That's kind of, I never really thought about that.
Gotcha. So the tone, yeah, and there's a lot of different ways a voice can be booming. It can be softly spoken, but exceedingly loud, or it can be yelled. It can be yelled angrily and deeply. And something I heard someone say recently is like a dad voice. It's like when it's serious, it's almost like you're a hair's breadth away from violence. Like this is going to stop one way or another. Even if you don't cross it, that's kind of what it felt like to you at the time.
That's it. Exactly. The way you just said it, like a hair away from violence. That's exactly it. Like,
gotcha.
Like something needed to get my attention.
Yeah. And it is very attention getting. It's very emotionally impactful too. It's like most people respond pretty strongly to being yelled at. And there's a lot of different ways to yell at people. And one of the most impactful is with that intensity. There's an intensity to it. You say you felt it in your chest.
That deepness, that reverberation, yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people have stood next to speakers and they can kind of feel them. If you've ever been at a concert, that kind of thing. I mean, wear some earplugs, but there's what was it? Sometimes deaf people like to go to concerts that are especially loud because they can actually feel the vibration. It's like, what is their experience of music? That's it. They're feeling it literally. Always found that fascinating. Okay, where are we going with this? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was the idea that it came from no identifiable source. That's its own type of clue as well. It's everywhere.
And the second one, the second one was like you just about to say, like all around, like just like coming at me from like everywhere.
Waves from
the first one
direction.
First one very very distinct, very soft and loving and right directly into my ear, and the second one very, like you said, authoritative and just like rain coming down.
Yeah. And you knew what that voice meant by that's enough? You had an impression of exactly what it wanted you to stop doing?
Yes.
If you had to kind of describe that briefly, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean, what was enough? Enough of what?
The drug use. The drug use. Being, right back on that path of since mom of being on pills and going right down the wrong, right back down the wrong path. So it was no doubt it was to get my attention that I needed to change something, or I was going to end up right back where I've already been.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. So it wasn't just the drug use, but actually kind of everything that represented the other stuff you felt you were sliding into, other old habits that you'd thought you'd given up or conquered.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There's no drug use without deception, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in a relationship anyway, not in a there's just not. I don't care what anybody says, there's not.
Yeah. And I'd say even if you're both doing it together, there's still things keep
there
from
is.
each other. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little more of they call it dysfunctional habits and patterns for a reason. It's not optimally functional. It's not really going to make things better, stronger. Yeah, for sure. I just didn't know if there were other components to it. There were other specific behaviors you were doing at the time that were, because a lot of times these intense experiences will come to us as the cumulative intersection of multiple things. it can be just one thing, but a lot of times it all adds up. And at a certain point, you're like, wow, that's enough. It's up to here, you know?
I think it's a 40 years worth of crap, probably, maybe, before it, even though I'd been clean for almost 5 years. Well, yeah, right at 5 years from the time I was arrested till the time that mom died, I was, I was clean, but I still had a track record of 34 years, or, well, not when I was a baby, but 25 years of consistent drug use.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I didn't ask, and I love when I do this, is subconsciously left a gap in the paper, like there was something missing there that I hadn't added yet. It's like I don't even understand how my own damn brain works. Did you have an emotional response to your mom whispering in your ear? Was it relief, reassurance? Was it doubt? Was it kind of a intense regret?
I think it was relief. I think it was definitely relief. There's one other little kind of caveat to this thing is that so when my sister died, I got my mom kind of like out of that apartment into a different apartment and kind of got her life somehow on a decent. I'm sorry, this is before my sister died. So this is after ICU, before my sister died. And I got her away from my sister and her. And I mentioned before, those two and their drug use mixed with my mom was just, so I got her own apartment, and we got a call one day while I was over there. We're sitting on her back porch, and it was my sister, and she said, "Hey, man, Sean needs somewhere to stay." And I kind of helped my mom stand strong and be like, "Hey, you just got an ICU. If probably a few months ago at this point, like you barely can take care of yourself. This is not the time to try to take care of them again." And then it was, which I thought that, in the moment I'd help mom stand strong and do a good thing. And then, 2 weeks later, my sister is dead in a hotel room. So I'm carrying that guilt and that weight of, maybe if I just let her come home, but, all these things. And then I'm also carrying the piece of, is my mom looking at me like I caused my sister's death? You know what I mean? Like, so I'm carrying
Sure.
that piece of it too.
Yeah.
So maybe it was that is enough on all of it, maybe.
Yeah. Those are extremely difficult questions. Like you're not looking to hurt anybody. You're not telling your sister to screw off because you want to see her suffer. And you're not looking to sacrifice anyone. Like if it takes killing my sister to save my mom, I'll do that. None of these things. We look at these situations like at this moment, I don't think that's good for her. I'm sorry, you guys are in better shape than she is, even if you don't have a roof over your head right now. I think this is going to be a disaster. And so you go with your gut. You say, this is the best decision I can make at the time for the right reason. And then tragedy strikes and you're going to always look back and go, what if I was wrong? What if it would have been fine to give them a place to stay for a week and everybody would still be alive? What if it all could have gone differently? And man, we second guess those things all the time. I look back in my life on decisions I wonder if I should have made differently. And we'll never know. All we can do is kind of make peace with it and kind of get that relief of like, it's okay. That's what happened. I tried my best. I honestly tried my best. I think that's one of our greatest self-protective emotional and psychological measures is really giving it enough thought ahead of time to say, I'm confident I did my best. I didn't half-ass it. I didn't blow it off and didn't care. I really did try, even if it all went to shit. That's, something like that. Sorry.
Yeah. It's hard to say, man.
No, it is true.
So life is so complicated.
But it's good that in discussing this, you're getting these additional remembrances, because we're doing that, as you were saying, that internal work, that self-reflective work of looking at this particular experience and what that message would have been. What is enough? Why would I need to hear that from someone else? Why would I say that to myself, possibly in my head? I mean, there's all kinds of other interpretations in terms of, if it was your mom that came back, maybe it was God that said, move on. That's enough. That's enough.
That's how I've always taken it. I've always taken it as that was the voice of, like, God using whatever voice that I needed to hear to get me out of that place.
Yeah. And the purely psychological answer would be that's you. That's in a sense, the God in you, your vision of what God would want for you, whether he spoke or not. That part of you spoke to yourself and said, you can do this differently. You're waking up yourself, communicating to yourself in that way. That's, as I said, just purely psychological side of things. And that's every bit as real as any other explanation. And I think what made it a powerful experience overall is dealing with it brought a lot of these struggles into sharp focus, made you look at it, made you feel it, and let you know that it's okay. That if you move, that you need to move from lost in the dark to what am I trying to say? It's not permission exactly from your mother, but her blessing to let it go, to bring you to that moment of saying, now I can see myself clearly and I know what to do. That's enough. Even this just extremely brief experience being that powerful, what I wasn't sure what you were going to say, and that it wouldn't be very long. And then you told it, I'm like, it almost doesn't matter whether it's anything other than exactly what it is. That, I would say, is the power of dreams. It is lowering so many of our external barriers to, that throw up distractions and attention and a million different things and demands on our time and problems we got to solve and all this other stuff. And we're allowed to just, sink back into that darkness where it's just me, myself, and I, and then experience myself and get greater clarity on what I think, what I feel, and what am I going to do about it? I see that cycle over and over again with folks.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
Yeah, that's a great story on that. I mean, do you feel like there's more elements, the angles we could take on looking at that dream, or more relevance we can draw from it? I'm willing to keep talking about it, but
no, I don't really. Like I said, I had, taken it for exactly what you just pretty much said. Is it's kind of like permission to move on, and then right behind that, like a swift kick in the ass, be like, okay, it's cool to move on. Now get your ass down there. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that was probably, I think I started saying this before, but it was a necessary element to kind of, both things had to happen at once. It's like, you can't just move on without forgiving yourself. That's not going to work. And you can't just forgive yourself and not move on. That's not going to work either. It's got to be both of these things. You got to say, this is okay. I'm okay.
She's okay. Whatever.
Yeah. And now you got to do something about it. And the two of, that's where we get those visceral experiences of like thunder in the chest of like, this means something. And we get that we get that in our waking life too. We talk about butterflies in the stomach when people are in love, or a pit in the stomach when a terrible tragedy is occurring. We have literal physical, emotional responses, and also being shocked into immediate action, like making a decision. It's very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's some of the storing those things inside. You don't want to go down too far this rabbit hole. About 50 pages left on The Body Keeps the Score, and I've had to read pages multiple times. You ever read that book?
I haven't. No,
It's an amazing book, but it talks about all this trauma that we go through in our youth and stuff that we don't really know how to, manage or understand, or I don't know the correct terminology, but we store all that stuff in our body our whole life, until we learn how to release it. Pretty cool book.
Definitely. And at the very least, every single thought, experience, emotion leaves a pathway in the brain. And that's where a lot of, what is it? When people get triggered, which there's a term that's overused, but there are real emotional triggers. Like, let's say, I yell at a video game and my wife has a negative reaction to it of like, I don't like to hear you yell. I'm not yelling at her. I'm yelling at the video game, but just a loud voice near her suddenly. And suddenly she's back in a thing, and it's like, it's very unpleasant. So that's just hardwired in a lot of us based on our experiences, our automatic responses to certain situations. And digging in and finding out what they are is very important to then be able to rewire it and say, well, I'm going to intentionally form a new pathway to something else. And that also helps dissipate that trauma a little bit. But as you were saying, physically, literally, it's true. Our experiences leave their scars on the outside of our body a lot of times, and also in these literal physical pathways in the brain, the neuron connections. And anyway, that's reinforcing what you said. But that sounds like a good book. What is it called again?
It's called The Body Keeps the Score. I highly recommend it. I mean, anyone that's gone through any sort of trauma or with that likes the psychology and everything like you do, like, I think it's an amazing book. Now, when you're someone like me, you might have to read a page 5 times to understand what I'm talking about, but it's taken me like 10 years to read the book, but it's been really good.
That is good. And that's the importance too of doing the work. It's like, sure, you make the decision. Well, now what? I mean, the decision is kind of the first step on the path. Now you got to walk it. Yeah. Now you got to do something about it.
Walk it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that brings us back around to your podcast, the Resilient Man Project, or at Resilient Man Project, link in the description, to show how other people have suffered similarly and how they've been able to look at themselves and make decisions about what they want for the rest of their life. Because I'd say it's never, you can't undo the past, but it's never too late to kind of start over in a different way. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm done with that.
Yep. Amen, man. Anyone can change. That's one of the premises of Resilient Man Project. I believe that no matter who you are, where you've been, the mistakes that you made, all that stuff, of course, it matters. You've hurt people. Like, there are parts of that matters, but it doesn't have any impact on who you can be. But you just have to make that, like, it sounds cliche, but like that next right decision and build that. I like to say build a positive habit, because I think a positive habit is like actually built for a person. Build that habit for yourself. And then, no matter how small, and like it compounds and becomes something life-changing.
Oh yeah. And that's some ancient wisdom too. It's funny how much good old ideas we come back to in modern times. The ancient Greeks were talking about this, like the idea of virtue is the practice of virtue is built by habit. It's what you do every single day. And if you're doing a lot of negative stuff, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly start doing everything positive. It's definitely step by step, building it up from being very young. But then that process can start at any time. You can look at anything you're doing and say, this is not, and I'd say that's the number one thing that gets people ready to quit whatever their addiction is. They look at themselves one day and say, this ain't working. This is not working for me anymore. This is not doing what it used to do or what I want it to do. And no one changes anything until they're ready for a change. Until they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want this. Then they give themselves a swift kick in the ass, or God says, now you're ready to hear my voice, perhaps. And then we do it.
And that change has to be for you. Like, it can't be for your mama or your wife or your kids or whatever. Like, you have to want to change for you, or it ain't going to work. That's
very powerful too. Yeah. That's that idea that you can't be, well, my wife wants me to quit. I mean, I don't really want to, but she does. Like, nah, it's not going to work. It's not, I mean, good for you. You want to make her happy. You love her. You even might know in your heart of hearts, it would actually be good for her if I did, but it also has to be something you want. It has to be, I'm doing this for the right reason. Otherwise it's a weak foundation, and it's not likely.
You're asking for that bomb to go off at any moment,
Yeah. Yeah. And you made just your general story of like, why do people relapse? They get hit by something so sudden and intense. You find your mom dead and there's pills on the floor. How do you not take them? That's
especially
unbelievable. Yeah. It at that moment, in that circumstance, no one else is there.
And like I said, I'm a man of faith, so I know why they were there, but I was able to overcome it.
Fair enough. And it might've been, I don't want to say it was a good thing to relapse, but it might have been, as you say, in a way necessary, because there were other things you weren't addressing. This really brought him to a sharper focus, going the wrong direction too long.
100%.
There could have been another way. You could have had the same epiphany in a different way. So I definitely don't want anyone to come away with the But it
also gave me the chance.
Hey, if your mom dies, relapse. That'll get your life together.
Yeah, but it also gave me the opportunity to like prove to myself that I was different, because I was able to have that realization and for the first time in my life, handle a situation like a man and husband. I should have handled it and called my wife, and it just allowed me to validate, that, hey, I'm not the guy that I used to be. I might have messed up, but man, I would have never done anything like that before, so that was another kind of little bonus.
Yeah, that is good. We got to celebrate our victories in that regard too, of like, I might have screwed up, but I would have kept screwing up in the past.
Oh yeah,
and now,
100%.
Not only do I not want that, I know how to stop it, and I'm going to stop it. And I did stop it. And then you brought that to her and kind of laid all the cards on the table and said, hey, this is what's been going on. That's tremendously freeing as well. It's like,
it is.
They talk about, you spoke of the idea of there's no drug use without deception, but there's also a lot of shame. And that full disclosure, laying it all out there. This is me naked. Look at all of it. I'm not proud of it, but I want you to see everything because I'm not going to hide any of it anymore. There's no deception on that. That dissipates the shame too. It's like, I can't be any more embarrassed than I am right now. Nothing's going to hurt worse than this. And I already did it. Now what?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good deal. Well, if you feel like we got a good answer on the dream and we had a good enough chat, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. It was fun. I appreciate it.
Appreciate that. And I always tell folks that when off camera before we talk is like, it's easy peasy. It's all the hard stuff's on me, and you should come away from it feeling satisfied with an answer, feeling like you had fun in the process. So if you're out there, afraid to talk to me, like, I don't have anything to say, well, I'll talk about anything with anybody. It's that easy. So we'll go ahead and plug you again. So this has been our friend Jonathan York from Georgia, business owner, husband, father of 5, entrepreneur, podcaster, founder of the Resilient Man Project. You can find him at Resilient Man Project all across social media and on YouTube. And for my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, get a t-shirt, coffee mug, 15 works of historical dream literature. That's how I'm getting all these interesting stories to tell. Most recent book, oh boy, The World of Dreams by Havelock Ellis. Can't remember my own products. Also, all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. And I'll just say once again, Jonathan, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, man. Really enjoyed it.
And everybody out there, thanks for listening.